My name is Sam Vaknin, and I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. The narcissist keeps discarded, devalued sources of supply in reserve, in kind of a mental warehouse. The narcissist seeks out his old sources of narcissistic supply when he has absolutely no other narcissistic supply source at his disposal. Narcissists frantically try to recycle their erstwhile and wasted sources in such a situation. But the narcissist would not do even that, had he not felt that he could still successfully extract a modicum of narcissistic supply from the old source. You must realize that even negative supply is narcissistic supply. Even to attack the narcissist is to recognize the narcissist's existence and to attend to him. So, contacting a devalued and discarded source of supply requires its re-idealization. When he dumped and abandoned the old source, the narcissist devalued it. He convinced himself that the defunct source was low quality, inferior, deficient, defective, hostile, or otherwise not such a big loss. But now what to do? He has to be in touch with such a source again. So now the narcissist has to recant his appraisal and re-idealize the source without admitting to having been mistaken in the first place. To preserve his grandiosity and sense of omniscience, the narcissist comes up with a narrative that accommodates both the devaluing content and the re-idealized image of the source. Examples. In the devaluation phase, the narcissist may say, "I'm leaving her because she is abusive." In the re-idealization phase, the same narcissist says about the same devalued and discarded source of supply, "She may have abused me, but she meant well. Whichever way she acted, it was with the best intentions in mind." In the devaluation phase, the narcissist would say, "I'm highly intelligent and cannot maintain a relationship with a stupid person, such as this woman." In the re-idealization phase, the narcissist would say, "She may be naive and gullible, but this renders her original and authentic." A re-idealization of the devalued source. So if you are an old source of narcissistic supply, first get over the excitement of seeing him again. It may be flattering, perhaps sexually arousing. Try to overcome these feelings. Then simply ignore the narcissist. Don't bother to respond in any way to his offer to get together. If he talks to you, keep quiet, don't answer. If he calls you, listen politely and then say goodbye and hang up. Return his gifts unopened. Indifference is what the narcissist cannot stand. It indicates a lack of attention and interest that constitutes the kernel of a negative narcissistic supply, which is to be avoided. One should be careful not to romanticize the narcissist. His remorse and good behavior are always linked to fears of losing his sources. Narcissists have no enemies. They only have sources of narcissistic supply. An enemy means attention. Attention means supply. So even an enemy can be a source of supply. One holds sway over one's enemy. If the narcissist has the power to provoke emotions in you, then you are still a source of supply to him, even if these emotions are negative, like hatred or fear. Regardless of which emotions the narcissist provokes, you are his supply source forever.
I know you like it long, but all I can offer right now is a micro episode. Hopefully not a psychotic one. Though you never know with me, do you? Okay, Shoshanim, Shvanpanim, Shovavim, everything, Madmadim. Today we are going to discuss, however briefly, a few unresolved issues, questions you keep sending me, and it's clear that I haven't been clear enough. And I owe you, at the very least, clarity. Okay, introjects and hoovering. When the narcissist comes across someone who he deems a potential source of narcissistic supply, a possible intimate partner, the narcissist takes a snapshot of that person. He introjects, he internalizes and introjects this person. He creates an internal object that represents that external object, that person. And then he idealizes the snapshot. He photoshops the snapshot. He idealizes the snapshot, and then he proceeds with the relationship. This phase is known as love bombing. Okay, throughout the relationship, the narcissist coerces you, forces you, blackmails you to conform to the idealized introject, to the idealized internal object. And if you don't, he penalizes you, he punishes you. And so at some point, the narcissist has to separate from you and individuate. I'm not going to it. There's like 20 videos here which deal with this. At some point, he has to devalue you. And it's identical to the process of idealization. It's like rewinding a movie. It's going backwards. So when the narcissist idealizes you, he coerces you to conform to the idealized image. And when the narcissist devalues you, he's doing exactly the same. He coerces you to conform to the devalued image. And that is known as projective identification. He alters, he modifies your behavior in ways which adhere to the devalued object or persecutory object, paranoid object, enemy object. He forces you to behave in ways which confirm and affirm and buttress and support and uphold his negative view of you. The same way he did when he thought that you were the world, that you were the center of the world, that you were the most beautiful, most intelligent, most everything, perfect, a perfect being. So when you're idealized, he pushes you to be perfect. And when you are devalued, when he devalues you, he pushes you to act malevolently. He pushes you to undermine him, to betray him. And this is the narcissist's betrayal fantasy. So on both ends of the relationship, the love bombing idealization phase, where the snapshot or the introject or the internal object is idealized, photoshopped, and the end game of the relationship, where the narcissist devalues and discards you, on both ends of the relationship, the narcissist uses coercion, molding you, sculpting you, changing you, brainwashing you, entraining you, taking over your mind, so as to tame you, domesticate you, housebreak you, make you conform to the internal object, whether this internal object is idealized or devalued. Okay, until now? Right. Then the narcissist discards you, and for reasons that I describe in other videos about hoovering, I recommend that you watch them, he hoovers you. He re-idealizes you. He dusts off the old snapshot. He takes the snapshot out of the library because he has a library of snapshots of significant others. So he takes your snapshot out of the library. He poofs off the dust, and now he has a snapshot. And now he photoshops the snapshot yet again. He re-idealizes the snapshot. And then he approaches you in an attempt to coerce you to conform to the re-idealized snapshot. The snapshot that used to be devalued is now re-idealized. It's again perfect and ideal and drop-dead gorgeous and super intelligent and amazing and unprecedented. And you need to conform to all these expectations. And so the narcissist again coerces you, uses again love bombing techniques, brainwashing, entraining, and other forms of coercion to make you conform to the re-idealized snapshot. Okay, until now? What happens when you resist? What happens when you refuse to be hoovered? When you decline the offer to be re-idealized? When you tell the narcissist to F off, when you go no contact, really no contact, effectively no contact. Like you don't stalk him on social media, for example, and you don't send him messages via third parties, because that is not no contact. That is being weak. That is being addicted. That is being unboundaried. To stalk your ex, to send him messages through third parties from anonymous accounts, that is laughable. That is laughable, and that is contemptible. And you should not do this, because you should go no contact. Now imagine that you're a strong person and you persist and you insist and you refuse to be in any sort of touch with the narcissist. You don't give him the opportunity to coerce you into being re-idealized. You refuse to play his game by his rules. You walk away. You cut him off. What then? The narcissist is faced with a dilemma. He has inside his mind a re-idealized internal object. And there is an external object, you, who refuses to conform, refuses to collaborate and collude in the re-idealization process of the internal object. The internal object is now perfect. The external object is rejecting, frustrating, and that external object is you. You're telling the narcissist, never again, no more, go away, I don't want to see you. There's a restraining order. You will end up in prison, and so on and so forth. So what does the narcissist do then? So you see, when there is a discrepancy between the internal object and the external object, the narcissist experiences dissonance. It's known as cognitive dissonance. He experiences cognitive dissonance. Dissonance is a strong sense of inner conflict and discomfort when there are two things that are incompatible, mutually exclusive, and contradictory. Two beliefs, two expectations, two hopes, two values, two thoughts, two anything. When they conflict, they create dissonance, and dissonance generates anxiety, and anxiety is intolerable. How does the narcissist resolve the cognitive dissonance? When you refuse to play along and to go along with the hoovering attempt, when you reject him outright, unequivocally, fully, unambiguously, for good. What does a narcissist do then? Of course, he rewrites history and reality. That's his major defense in all cases. He convinces himself that he never wanted you really in the first place. He never did really want you. He was doing you a favor. By hoovering you, he was giving you a second chance. And you flunked it as he had expected you to do. And he is the one who discarded you this time. This second time, having tried to hoover you, you were not the one who turned him down. He was the one who decided that after all, you're not compatible, you're not up to the job, you're not qualified. So he rewrites, he reframes reality and history delusionally to convince himself that he was magnanimous in his effort to hoover you. He was providing you with a chance to fix yourself, to heal yourself, to make reparations on your mistakes. And you, stupidly, because you are stupid, stupidly, you rejected his offer. A once-in-a-lifetime offer, never recurring. And so, having proven your inanity and stupidity, he doesn't want you. Now, he's the one who discarded you. The hoovering petered off, not because you wouldn't collaborate, but because he wouldn't persist. That's the way, that's a story the narcissist tells himself when he's turned down in a hoovering attempt. And the aim is to preserve the integrity of the internal space of the narcissist, the space which hosts all the internal objects. What the narcissist does, he re-idealizes he retouches, he photoshops your snapshot in his mind, your mental representation in his mind, the internal objects, the object that stands in for you in his mind, he re-idealizes it, he photoshops it, renders it perfect. He then approaches you and tries to coerce you into conforming to this re-idealized object. If you turn him down, he's going to instantly redevalue the object, redevalue the internal object, and render it a persecutory object, an enemy, in short. And this is exactly what the narcissist does whenever he comes across any form of narcissistic injury or mortification. I recommend that you watch my interview with Daria Żukowska, the Polish clinical psychologist, my interview about mortification. I explain these mechanisms in detail there. Okay, I hope I've answered your questions. When you go away, when you're discarded, or when you break up with a narcissist, when you walk away, when you walk off, you are still there. Your representation in the narcissist's mind survives. It is imbued with emotions. It is cathected. Negative emotions, you're devalued in his mind. Or fantastic emotions, fantasy defense, you are idealized. One way or the other, the narcissist never lets go of you as far as the internal object. When the narcissist time on earth comes, when he passes away, there are thousands of introjects in his mind in various stages of undress. Some of them are idealized, some of them are devalued, some of them are being re-idealized. There's a library, giant library, which he constantly plays with, constantly cathects and decathects, emotionally invests in and disinvests in, commits himself to and runs away, etc., etc. So there's this management software that runs this introject library in his mind. And the critical thing is for the external object to match 100% the internal object that represents it in the narcissist's mind. No daylight. The narcissist dedicates his entire life to forcing people, extorting people, coercing people into becoming inert internal objects, extensions of himself in the fullest sense, figments of his fantasy, imagination, in utterly demented mind. Okay, guys and gayettes, girls and girlettes. Today we have a seriously complicated video, but worth wading through, worth listening to, because it's going to expose the inner secrets of the narcissist's soul, if he had one. And this is the second part. The first part is titled Secret Reason Narcissist Devalues, Discards You. It's a YouTube video available on my channel, Secret Reason Narcissist Devalues and Discards You. I strongly suggest that you watch this video first and then continue to watch this video. At any rate, I'll make a recap for those of you who don't want to spend the totality of your life listening to Sam Vaknin, author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, and a handsome, devilishly handsome professor of psychology, at least if I say so. Okay, Shoshanim. Many of you have asked me, the narcissist devalues and discards his intimate partner because he wants to separate and individuate. The intimate partner is a mother's substitute. She's a maternal surrogate. So the narcissist wants to reenact early childhood conflicts with his biological mother, with his original caregiver, with his primary object. He wants to reenact these conflicts with his intimate partner. And so he needs to devalue her and he needs to discard her in order to separate from her. And by separating, becoming an individual. The problem is that the narcissist had failed to separate from his original mother. He had failed, therefore, to develop a fully constellated self. He has no ego. Narcissists are selfless. I've always been telling you this. We are selfless people. Okay. No separation, no individuation. The narcissist remains eternally enmeshed with his mother figure, with his mother. And he needs to try to separate. So he devalues you and he discards you as an intimate partner. But then many of you have asked, and justifiably so, if he goes through all this, if he idealizes the intimate partner and then devalues her and then discards her just in order to separate, individuate, why then does he go on to another intimate partner? Or, even worse, why does he try to hoover the erstwhile discarded, devalued intimate partner? What's the secret of hoovering and replacement? The answer is actually quite simple. You remember that when the narcissist first comes across a potential source of supply or a potential intimate partner for a shared fantasy, the narcissist creates a snapshot of her. He takes a kind of photo of her. He creates a snapshot and then he photoshops the snapshot. He works on it. And this is the process of idealization, an integral part of co-idealization. By rendering his partner ideal, perfect, brilliant, handsome, or beautiful, the narcissist renders himself irresistible, unique, and special. So there is this process of a mutual admiration society. In the love bombing and grooming and honeymoon phases, the narcissist projects, communicates to his partner, "You are special, and that makes me special." So the narcissist creates a snapshot of the intimate partner. In clinical terms, he creates an internal object or an introject, and then he continues to interact exclusively with this snapshot, not with the external intimate partner, not with the real you, but with your representation in his mind. He continues to interact with this representation. As you grow up, as you develop, as you acquire new friends, as you start to work in a new job, as you travel, you begin to deviate and diverge from the snapshot, because the snapshot is idealized, is perfect, and above all, is static. The main role of a snapshot is to reduce the narcissist's abandonment anxiety. He is in full control of the snapshot, so he is not afraid of being rejected and abandoned. But you, on the other hand, you deviate and diverge from the snapshot because you're a living, breathing human being. And so this renders you an enemy, and you become a persecutory object. At that point, the narcissist needs to separate from you and individuate. He needs to complete with you the cycle that he had failed to complete with his original mother. So he devalues you and discards you. But pay attention. He devalues you. He discards you. He separates from you. You as an external object, not from the snapshot. This is a crucial insight which had evaded and eluded most of the self-styled experts online. The narcissist discards the external object, you, the real you. He devalues the external object, you, the real you. But there is nothing he can do, and there is nothing he does to the internal object, to the snapshot, to the introject. The internal object remains unmolested, unaltered, immutable, unchanged, pure, virginal, like the driven snow. The internal object is always there, perfection reified, totally idealized mother figure. The narcissist remains enmeshed with the internal object. So the shared fantasy ceases to exist externally in the environment, but not in the narcissist's mind. The narcissist is merged and fused with the internal object. The narcissist gets rid of you. He devalues you. But at the very same time, he is cathected. He is emotionally invested in your representation in his mind. So the long and the short of it is, the narcissist separates, individuates from the real you, but the narcissist never separates or individuates from your representation, your avatar in his mind. The connection between the narcissist and your icon in his mind, your representation, your internal object, is a connection of enmeshment and engulfment and merger and fusion. So he needs to hoover you. He needs to hoover you because he is still involved with you. Not with you, but with your photocopy, with your snapshot. And so he has something called repetition compulsion. It's a repetition compulsion. He needs to approach you time and again, and then avoid you time and again, in a vain, inane, crazy-making attempt to separate and individuate from an external object, while still remaining unseparated from the internal representation of that external object, of you. Another problem is, narcissism is a missionary religion. It is replete, it's a religion that is replete with the deity, which is a false self. It has rituals which are obsessive compulsive in nature, and it forms an addiction. The shared fantasy is a part of this religion. It's populated with idealized snapshot, with idealized introjects or internal objects. These are the Olympian gods of this religion. You are one of them. If the narcissist fails to hoover you, he is going to approach another intimate partner, a substitute. And so it's like the Russian matryoshkas. It's a doll within a doll within a doll within a doll. There's the original huge doll of the narcissist's original mother. Then there are other dolls inside the big doll, and these dolls are his intimate partners. But he never gets rid of any of these dolls. Never. They all reside in his mind, populating it ever increasingly with idealized snapshot, with introjects. His separation individuation is unattainable because he becomes enmeshed and he merges and fuses with a growing number of mother figures. He started off with one. He starts off with one. His original biological mother, a primary object, a caregiver, a mother who had been a dead mother in the emotional sense, absent, selfish, parentifying, instrumentalizing. So he starts off with this mother, is unable to separate from her. And then he finds an intimate partner. He tries to separate from her. And he cannot separate from her because he is equally merged and fused with her snapshot in his mind. So he finds another intimate partner. And it's infinite regression. And at the end of his life, when he is 61, like certain professors of psychology I know, his mind is full of 20, 30, 40 mother figures from which he is not separated. And individuation becomes utterly impossible. The shared fantasy, being a part of a religion, is compulsive in nature, is a ritual. It comprises a regression to an infantile phase prior to separation individuation from the mother figure. It involves merger, fusion, an oceanic filling, enmeshment, engulfment. There's no self-object or object representations. We'll come to it in another video, but it's about disappearing back into the womb, becoming one with mother or the mother substitute, you, the intimate partner, In this sense, the shared fantasy is a mystical experience. Mystical experiences are also regressions to an infantile phase prior to separation individuation from a God figure, from the cosmos, from nature. Mystical experiences are about merging, infusing, and vanishing into a bigger whole. And the same with the shared fantasy. It's about merging, infusing, and vanishing into a completeness, into a unity, which is the union of the narcissist and his intimate partner. The shared fantasy is the mystical experience within the religion of narcissism. Narcissism is a missionary religion. The narcissist converts you into his religion and then introduces you to this mystical experience where you are one with the narcissist. You disappear. And this works perfectly with many codependents. Borderlines react very badly to this because they have two anxieties: abandonment anxiety and engulfment anxiety. And whatever you say about the experience with the narcissist, it's definitely engulfing. Borderlines resent this and they decompensate and act out. I have numerous videos about this topic. So this is the reason that narcissists hoover you, and then if they fail, try to replace you with someone and then go through the same experience. A repetition compulsion. Nothing changes. It's a carbon copies. Each relationship or pseudo-relationship is a clone of the previous one. There's no learning or evolutionary process here. The narcissist does not evolve. He is totally stagnant. He is static. Now, I'm going to make another video comparing mystical experiences to mental illness, and especially narcissism and the shared fantasy of narcissism. But suffices to say, and I've dealt with it in many of my videos, that the best way to think about pathological narcissism is that it's a private religion where the narcissist is both a god and a worshipper. It's a one-man cult. And then he's trying to convert everyone around him to the cult in order to obtain supply and to establish the mystical aspect of the religion, which is his shared fantasy, within which he can reenact early childhood conflicts via obsessive-compulsive rituals. One of these rituals is entraining. Entraining via repetitive abuse. And there you fit in. He takes over you. By taking over you, he again merges and fuses with you. This is the first stage. He needs to merge and fuse with you. He needs to become one with you, a single organism, in order to be able to separate and individuate. You can't separate if you're not first fused. You need to become one in order later to separate and become two. Individuation with the narcissist crucially depends on attaining the initial goals of the shared fantasy, eliminating you as an independent entity, digesting you, assimilating you, rendering you an extension and an internal object. And now the narcissist is one with you, and now he can separate and individuate by devaluing you and discarding you. But what the narcissist fails to understand is the glitch in the coding, the glitch in the software. He can separate and individuate only from you as an external object by rendering you an enemy or a persecutory object. But he can never separate and individuate from your representation inside his mind. He is a captive of his internal world. In this sense, narcissism is almost indistinguishable from psychotic disorder, psychosis, as Kernberg had suggested in the mid-70s. It's a sorry state. It's a sorry state of an adult who desperately tries to become an individual and keeps failing precisely because he refuses to let go of mommy, the original mommy, or you. I know you miss me. It's easy. Just say it. Come out and say it. Vaknin, we miss you. My name is Sam Vaknin, and I'm the only author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. I'm also your favorite professor in any subject whatsoever. This happens to be psychology. Today we're going to discuss two tangential subjects. One is mortification, and how mortification contributes to the regulation of moods in the narcissist, and to the transition from one type of narcissist to another. I've dealt with these topics at length in previous videos, but today I would like to clarify it a bit. And the second topic on today's relatively short video is hoovering, a contribution to the dynamic of hoovering. I coined the word hoovering together with many other words like ghosting, flying monkeys, somatic narcissists, cerebral narcissists, and so on and so forth. I coined it to describe a process whereby the narcissist tries to revive the shared fantasy, but to revive a specific shared fantasy by reacquiring, by teaming up again with a re-idealized, as a process of re-idealization, a re-idealized erstwhile previous intimate partner. Hoovering never happens if the intimate partner mortifies the narcissist. But anything short of mortification, and you are up for hoovering. Today I would like to make a minor contribution to this topic as well. But before we go there, I would like to add to your reading list the assignment for this semester. These are books that you have to read, as you know, you have to submit reports and so on. And I'm about to add a book which I would place at the top of the list. So this is really a sine qua non. This is something you have to do. It's an amazing book, and even giants like Theodore Millon rely on this book extensively as an authoritative source, and it's very short. It's in terms of textbooks, it's less than 300 pages long, but it's a bombshell. It includes everything known about personality disorders. I strongly recommend it to any student, especially since you are postgraduates. This is a way to keep up to speed, keep yourself updated. So Len Sperry, S-P-E-R-R-Y, is the author, and the book is The Handbook of Diagnosis and Treatment of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5 Personality Disorders, Assessment, Case Conceptualization, and Treatment. This is the third edition, published in 2016. One of the major advantages of this book is that it keeps making a distinction between a personality style and a personality disorder. Many people have the same personality style as someone with a personality disorder. For example, many people are grandiose, they're narcissistic, they're entitled, they lack empathy, etc., etc. Yet they don't measure up to the level of a diagnosis. They have a personality style. And here's these amazing tables comparing the style to the disorder. Millon had adopted this contraption and had incorporated it in his seminal book, Personality Disorders in Modern Life, which I keep quoting from in my videos. So Len Sperry, Handbook of Diagnosis and Treatment of DSM-5 Personality Disorders, a must. Let us now go to the topics of the video, starting with mortification. To remind you, narcissistic mortification is an extreme form of decompensation. Let's regress a bit. Each and every human being, healthy and unhealthy, has something called narcissistic defense mechanisms. Narcissistic defense mechanisms are strategies, ways of reframing and reinterpreting reality so that it doesn't inflict grave damage on one's soul or psyche. So sometimes reality is too harsh, injuring, injurious, wounding, painful, hurtful, and cannot be countenanced, cannot be accepted as it is. Psychological defense mechanisms kick in, and they essentially falsify reality. They falsify reality by beautifying it, by changing it, by recasting it, by looking at it from another angle, by pretending, by denying, by repressing, by splitting reality to all good and all bad and identifying with the good. There are numerous ways of rewriting history and absenting yourself from unmitigated friction with reality, so as to ameliorate anxiety, regulate your internal environment, including your moods and your emotions, and allow you to survive, simply. So defense mechanisms are crucial for survival. In the absence of defense mechanisms, people disintegrate. They fall apart. They become psychotic. Borderlines, for example, have extremely primitive defense mechanisms, so they don't cope very well with reality. It's like they have no skin, and they are in direct touch with reality, not mediated through elaborate defense mechanisms. Similarly, narcissists resort usually to primitive defenses, such as splitting or grandiosity. And narcissists, similarly, are constantly injured and wounded by reality, narcissistic injury. And so, narcissistic mortification is when all the psychological defense mechanisms at the disposal of the narcissist crumble. All of them are disabled. All of them are inactivated at the same moment. And when I say moment, I mean moment. One could argue that normal people, healthy people, also can undergo narcissistic mortification, because in each and every one of us, there's healthy narcissism. Here I disagree vehemently with Otto Kernberg. Otto Kernberg claimed there's no such thing as healthy narcissism. I completely beg to disagree. And on my corner are 99% of the scholars of narcissism. We all believe that there is healthy narcissism. Well, since there is healthy narcissism, and healthy narcissism underlies one's sense of self-esteem, regulates one's sense of self-worth, gives one self-confidence, since there is healthy narcissism, we should have a narcissistic mortification also in the case of healthy people. But healthy people have numerous defense mechanisms, primitive, less primitive, highly evolved, socially embedded and contextualized defense mechanisms. So healthy people emerge from mortification almost instantly by drawing on ego resources and outside resources which the narcissist doesn't have, because it doesn't have a functioning ego. Narcissist has only primitive defense mechanisms, primitive, childlike, infantile, and these are his only protections against a hostile, harsh jungle out there. And when these defenses fall apart, he falls apart. And this process of falling apart is called decompensation. Defense mechanisms compensate for the unsavory, unpalatable, unacceptable aspects of reality. And when they disappear, when they are no longer available to the narcissist, there is a process of decompensation, inability to compensate. Reality invades like a tsunami, like a tidal wave, invades the narcissist's emptiness, in effect, fills him up with tremendous pain and hurt, unleashes his buried, repressed, and denied negative emotionality from his early childhood, and he becomes effectively a borderline. His emotions are dysregulated, his moods become labile. He becomes, to all intents and purposes, psychodynamically, a borderline. Mortification pushes the narcissist to become a borderline. It is a result. What is mortification? Happens when the narcissist is exposed to a deeply traumatizing, deeply challenging, deeply humiliating event. And so the narcissist copes with mortification and with such events in one of two ways. He can render the mortification external. He can convert it to external mortification. What does it mean? External mortification is when the narcissist casts himself, presents himself, believes that he is a hapless victim, he adopts the victim stance. He doesn't pretend, he believes, he's fully convinced that he had been victimized by malicious, envious, or mentally ill people. And so he transfers the shame and the humiliation and the guilt sometimes and the responsibility and the locus of control to evil outsiders. And this preserves his self-image as a good person, a morally upright person who had done nothing wrong, who did not deserve such treatment. But if your fate and life and mental health and well-being and welfare and ability to function, if they're controlled, if all these are controlled from the outside, it's very frightening. It's threatening, and it pushes you to depression. When the narcissist chooses to externalize the mortification, he becomes clinically depressed. We are beginning to see glimmers of what I'm about to tell you. Mortification seems to regulate moods and affects. It is a regulator. Now, borderlines, and to a large extent narcissists, but not only, histrionics, schizoids, paranoids, they have a problem with emotional dysregulation. Mortification forces them to make a choice. In terms of mood lability, for example, it forces them to choose depression. It's like what we call in quantum mechanics the collapse of the wave function. There are many possibilities: happiness, depression, this, that, and the mortification pushes them to make a final choice and to adopt depression, the depressive stance. And so, by the way, in psychoanalytic terms, this is a regressive phase. It's regressing to the paranoid schizoid phase of Melanie Klein, but we'll leave it aside for a minute. Function number one of mortification: reducing mood lability by settling on a specific mood, by a collapse of the wave function of moods in quantum mechanic terms. This is function number one. But there is also emotional dysregulation, enhanced emotional dysregulation after mortification. The narcissist is awash with negative emotionality. Had he been a borderline, he would have been pushed to suicide. Indeed, many think that narcissistic mortification is life-threatening. I wouldn't go that far, but some scholars do, especially in the 1950s. So one option is to choose external mortification. Then there's a second option, to choose internal mortification. Internal mortification is when the narcissist says, it's my fault. I made it happen. For example, my abuse pushed her to misbehave this way. My lack of agreeableness, my disagreeableness forced people to humiliate me. So he accepts his contributions to the mortifying event. And he also accepts his ensuing responsibility. If he actually engineered the event, if he led inexorably to the event, if he pushed everyone present to humiliate him, to torture him, to mock him, to impinge on his interests, whatever, if he pushed people to misbehave, then he's responsible for it. It's an acceptance of responsibility and contribution. And of course, by reframing the event this way, the narcissist restores his sense of mastery, his sense of control over the situation. I made it happen. His sense of control of others. I pushed them. They were my pawns. They didn't. It's like Jesus says in the New Testament, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they are doing. So they didn't know what they were doing. I pushed them. And this position is very comforting. As the narcissist says, well, I'm in control of such situations. I can prevent them from happening. But this pushes him to be hypervigilant, to be paranoid, to develop referential ideation, to develop persecutory delusions. Because if he's in control And if he can push people and so on and so forth, he needs to be on his toes to prevent this from happening again. He needs to be on his toes in both cases. If people are evil and malicious, he needs to be on his toes, he needs to be on his guard. People are out to get him. They're about to hurt him. They're about to torture him and torment him and taunt him and humiliate him and mock him. And worse, he needs to be careful. So this creates hypervigilance, paranoid ideation, secondary delusions, referential ideation, etc. But there is the same response when there is internal mortification. Because in internal mortification, it is the narcissist who makes it happen. So he sort of brings it upon himself. And in this case, the hypervigilance is self-directed. The paranoid and referential ideation is self-directed. The persecutory delusions are self-delusions. So we have two solutions. External mortification with outward directed paranoia, and internal mortification with inward directed paranoia. One could call it hypervigilance and autovigilance, if you wish. That's a very interesting statement, because we have disorders with autoplastic defenses. These disorders used to be called neurosis. It seems that we no longer use this term, more or less, but neurosis at the time, they were disorders of autovigilance, when the patient took responsibility for everything bad and wrong that had happened in her life, and consequently was very afraid of herself as her worst enemy. I've seen the enemy and it is I. And so it seems that mortification, first of all, regulates mood, pushes the narcissist towards depression if he chooses internal mortification, and pushes the narcissist towards neurosis if he chooses internal mortification. And in both cases, the mediating vector, the mediating resource is paranoia. So mortification engenders paranoia, provokes paranoia. But then the only question left, is the paranoia directed outward, in which case there's depression, or is it directed inward, in which case there's neurosis? Now, it sounds to you like, so what? But it's a big deal, trust me. I'll tell you in a minute why, after I get some liquid courage. Is there anything better than red wine? Yes, more red wine. Okay, why is it a big deal? It's a big deal because in the past, all the greatest minds of psychology made a distinction between psychosis and neurosis. There were the neuroses, multiple, and there were the psychosis, multiple. And it seems that mortification can create a bridge between neurosis and psychosis. It can create a bridge between internal objects interpreted as external objects in external mortification, and external objects interpreted as internal objects in case of internal mortification. Remember, when external objects are interpreted as internal, that's narcissism. When internal objects are interpreted as external, that's psychosis. And mortification allows you both, depending which type you choose. It's like there's a menu. When you're mortified as a narcissist, you have a menu. Or the maître d' comes to the table and says, Monsieur, you can choose one of two. Today we have le plat du jour. Today we have an offer, external mortification, and we give you the option of depression. And the other dish is internal mortification. We give the option of neurosis. In the first case, essentially, you react, you have narcissistic defenses, narcissistic ancient primitive structures are activated. Melanie Klein would have appreciated this. And in the second case, neurotic structures are activated. And in both cases, In both cases, there's a god-awful almighty confusion between internal objects and external objects. It seems that the mechanism that causes us to confuse internal and external objects is not actually trauma, but is the reaction to events, which is mortification. We may have to reconsider whether narcissism, borderline, etc., are post-traumatic events or post-mortification events. And you can say, what's the difference? Trauma creates mortification. Not really. First of all, most traumas don't create mortification. But trauma is usually exclusively the outcome of reaction to events that is not mediated via an interpretative framework. In other words, trauma is direct. You experience something and there's trauma. There is no middle stage where you analyze, think about it, reframe it, put it in context. You don't have time to activate any defense mechanism. There's an event and immediate trauma. It's a so direct. I mean, the traumatic response is so immediate that there is good reason to suggest that trauma is simply a dysfunction of reality testing, not actually a real wound or real injury but simply misapprehending reality. And misapprehending reality in a way that is very threatening, of course. So you could say that trauma is subspecies of paranoia. Paranoia is the same. It's triggered immediately without mediation. So trauma is when you confront a potentially mortifying event and you immediately react by developing a full-fledged panoply of cognitions and emotions which are integrated cohesively into a narrative, which we later call trauma. That's trauma. Mortification is not the same. You can have mortification 5 days later, 5 months later, even years later. Mortification first undergoes a phase of cognitive analysis. The emotions are not on the surface. There's no access to most of these emotions because they're very threatening. There is, in other words, trauma first happens, then is dissociated. So the sequence in trauma is event, trauma, dissociation. The sequence in mortification is event, dissociation, mortification. It's a very, very important distinction. Very crucial distinction. Because in the case of trauma, it is already cognitively and emotionally processed reaction to the event. It's a choice, in other words. In the case of mortification, I'm sorry. In the case of mortification, I repeat, I'm sorry, I misled you. In the case of mortification, it's cognitively and emotionally processed reaction to the event. So mortification is a choice. Trauma is not a choice. Trauma is very similar to what Freud called abreaction. Trauma is a totally automated process. It's not a choice. It's, I would say, a constitutional propensity, constitutional defect. I don't know what other words to use. It's like the person is trauma ready. It's like high definition ready television. He's trauma ready. And this is his mode of reacting to reality. This is the language he uses to process reality and to try to act within reality self-efficaciously. Mortification is not like trauma, because mortification requires a phase of analyzing what had happened and then allowing yourself to experience the reactive emotions, the emotions in reaction to what had happened. There's processing involved, and only then you can feel mortified. But this processing is unconscious, is dissociated. Summary: trauma is event, and then trauma. So trauma is totally automatic reaction to event. If you have the tendency to process reality via trauma. So, reality, trauma, forgetting about it, dissociation. Opposite, reality, dissociating the reality, forgetting about it. Background, unconscious processing, cognitive and emotional, and then mortification. Very crucial observation. And then according to the choice you make, because you process everything cognitively and emotionally, and then you make a choice. Do I prefer an external trauma, or do I prefer an external mortification, or do I prefer internal mortification? If you choose external mortification, you end up depressed, depression. You regulate your mood. You prefer to regulate your mood than to regulate your cognition or your emotion. You think your mood is the main threat, so you choose external mortification, and you end up choosing, making a choice of depression. You regulate your mood badly. It's a bad choice, but it's better than up and down. The other option is internal mortification, where you actually regulate your emotions and your cognitions in ways which are neurotic, autoplastic, for example. You blame yourself. Okay, we said in earlier videos that collapse and mortification regulate moods, but they also regulate something much more important, switching between self-states. Now, what is called diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, what is called personality disorders, that's very antiquated notion. This notion is like at least 50 years old, if not 60. We don't think about these things this way anymore. It's very good for insurance purposes. It's very good for pharmaceutical companies and, medical doctors and hospitals. But scholars in the field, we don't think about it this way. We think in terms of post-traumatic conditions, dissociation, self-states. We don't think in terms of personality disorder. This is very old thinking. So, personality disorders are self-states. And because they are self-states, and because disordered people have many self-states, you can easily switch from one so-called diagnosis to another so-called diagnosis. You can easily switch from one personality disorder to another personality disorder. You can switch from one self-state to another self-state. For example, borderlines under stress, anticipating rejection and humiliation and abandonment, borderline switch from one self-state, the borderline self-state, to another self-state, the secondary psychopath self-state. That's an example. Similarly, narcissists switch from the narcissistic grandiose self-state to the paranoid self-state. We all switch, mentally ill people, mentally disordered people, switch between self-states. What is the trigger? What decides if there is switching or not? Mortification and collapse. Mortification and collapse, they are the triggers and the bridges. They cause the covert narcissist to become overt, the overt to become covert, the somatic to become cerebral, the cerebral to become somatic, the inverted to become overt, the borderline to become psychopath, the psychopath to become narcissist, the narcissist to become borderline. All these things happen daily, all the time, to all people with so-called personality disorder. Any therapist will confirm this, and any spouse, any intimate partner of a person, of someone with personality disorder, will confirm this. Narcissists often are obsessive compulsive are grandiose people are paranoid. And everyone will tell you that making these artificial distinctions between personality disorder is nothing short of counterfactual. It's psychology's fantasy. It's not true. It's simply not true. And in the ICD-11, they are thinking of putting everything under one diagnosis, personality disorder, which is something I've been advocating since 1995. But what I've added in the last 4 years is the mechanical, psychodynamic explanation why people shift between these so-called diagnoses. Because they're mortified. And when they're mortified, they're faced with a choice. They have to process the events, they analyze them cognitively,
They experience them emotionally, and all of this happens in the unconscious. And then they make a choice. It could be a mood affective choice. I choose depression. Or it could be a neurotic choice of neurosis. I accept responsibility and so on. But in both cases, they transition to another diagnosis, another type. The covert goes through mortification. And if he becomes, for example, neurotic, if he chooses neurosis, he becomes instantly overt. Because what is neurosis? Is to say, I was in control. I did everything. It all happened because of me. That's a grandiose statement. Covert narcissists who make grandiose statements openly, they are not covert anymore. They're open. They're overt. So through such processing of the mortification, the covert becomes overt. And that's only one example. Similarly, the borderline. If the borderline chooses internal mortification, for example, she anticipates abandonment, or she has been humiliated, or she's been rejected, openly rejected by someone, borderlines cannot digest and cannot assimilate rejection, abandonment, and humiliation. So when this happens to them, they're mortified. The minute they're mortified, they begin to process the mortification. The processing time in borderline is very, very brief. It's days, hours, sometimes minutes. And so they process the mortification cognitively. They process the mortification emotionally. It all happens in the background, in the unconscious. The borderline just feels ill at ease, uncomfortable, because ego dystony is growing. As the processing continues, ego dystony is growing. And so at some point, the mortification becomes conscious. Yes, the processing is finished and it becomes conscious. And then the borderline has to make a choice. Do I want to be depressed? Or do I want to be neurotic? If she chooses neurosis, she transitions to secondary psychopath. Because what is neurosis? What is the internal mortification solution? It's to say, I'm in control. I'm the master. I'm going to decide how things are going to happen. That's defiance. That's lack of impulse control. That's recklessness. These are all features of the psychopath. So she becomes psychopathic because she had chosen the internal mortification thing. But what happens if she chooses the external mortification and she becomes depressed? Well, we have a combination of borderline with depressive aspects. And of course, what is a borderline with depressive aspects? It's a covert narcissist. It's a covert narcissist because her grandiosity is preserved, but her depression pushes her into a schizoid position, into the background, away from people. And if you put all this together, you get a covert, but not any covert narcissist. Similarly, I can show you how applying these simple principles gives you any diagnosis within the personality disorders space. Schizoid, paranoid, you name it. Here's a game for you. Sit at home, write down these principles. Principle, mortification, unconscious processing, and then you can choose depression or neurosis. In depression, you're not in control. In depression, you're controlled from the outside. In neurosis, you control. Okay? Simple principles. Take them, use them, apply them to personality disorders, and see the amazing results. You easily transition from narcissist to schizoid, from schizoid to borderline, from borderline to paranoid. Immediately you see they are all facets of one single clinical entity. It's so obvious. Okay, I want to talk, to say a word or two about hoovering, and I will let you go, having hoovered you into this video. When you dump the narcissist, when you abandon, when you break up with the narcissist, and even when the narcissist discards you, discarding you, when the narcissist discards you, that's internal mortification. The narcissist has failed. Otherwise, why would he have to discard you? For example, if he discards you and he devalues you, he has to admit that he had made a mistake when he had idealized you. If I say to myself, she's stupid and ugly, I have to get rid of her, I also instantly have to ask myself, then how come did you consider her beautiful and intelligent only 2 years ago? Were you wrong then, or are you wrong now? Are you capable of being wrong? The discard phase is a challenge to grandiosity, because to devalue your intimate partner and then to discard her, you must admit that you had made a mistake when you had idealized her. So there's a mortification there. And exactly this mortification pushes the narcissist to hoover, because even the discard, and of course when you break up with the narcissist or you dump him or you cheat on him, all these events are mortifying events, and it's a challenge to the narcissist's grandiosity. He needs to resolve the mortification, and he resolves the mortification by converting it into either external or internal. In a minute we'll connect it to hoovering. The narcissist, when he discards you, devalues and discards you, or when you devalue and discard the narcissist, because you remember, this process of idealization is mutual. The narcissist idealizes you, you idealize the narcissist. It's co-idealization, co-idealization. Devaluation is the same, co-devaluation. You devalue the narcissist devalues you. Whichever the case may be, it's mortifying. If you are the one who had dumped the narcissist, it's definitely mortifying. If he is the one who had discarded you, he has to admit that he had made a mistake when he had idealized you. That's mortifying. It's a challenge to grandiosity. So he can then choose. Once mortification sets in, he must choose between external and internal. He can say, well, good riddance. She's a slut, she's stupid, she's ugly, she's fat, she's old, she's whatever. So external mortification involves overt devaluation, blaming the other. She's evil, she's malicious, she conspired against me, she stabbed me in the back, she betrayed me. External mortification is transferring the locus of control to you. But this creates narcissistic injury. It's a horrible narcissistic injury, because it means that the narcissist is handing the locus of control to you. You are in control. You had implemented your evil scheme, and he was your raw material. The narcissist was a victim. Being a victim and being God, doesn't sit well together. God is not a victim. God's son was a victim, but God is not a victim. So it's a problem for the narcissist to maintain both simultaneously. It creates what we call cognitive dissonance. On the one hand, the narcissist believes himself to be God, and on the other hand, here he is the victim of a woman he had just devalued. So he is not only a victim, he is a victim of an inferior person. Mortifying. If he chooses internal mortification, it's even worse, because he says, I pushed her away, I made her cheat on me, I abused her, I mistreated her, I rejected her and humiliated her and abandoned her long before she did. I'm still in control, I made this happen. Okay, if you're still in control and you made this happen, you made what happen? You made what happen? You destroyed your relationship? You proved yourself an idiot for having idealized the wrong person? What did you make happen? So, in both cases, there's a challenge of grandiosity, and the only way to restore the grandiosity is to hoover you. Hoovering is about restoring grandiosity. End of story. There's no other motive to hoovering. People keep asking me, why does he hoover me? He has, another source of supply. He's married. He's hoovering you not only when he doesn't have other sources of supply. That's functional hoovering. And that's not okay. He is hoovering you not usually. He is trying to hoover you mainly to restore his grandiosity. On very few occasions, it has to do with practical, functional, utilitarian thinking. Like, I don't have a source of supply, I'll go back to Amanda. Or I don't have a shared fantasy. Let's try to re-establish a shared fantasy, and I will re-idealize Amanda so that she can fit into the new shared fantasy. It's hard work to hoover. to re-idealize. It's counterfactual. You have to fight yourself. You have to, and again, you have to admit that you're wrong, because you had devalued Amanda only 2 weeks ago. Why are you hoovering her now? I mean, 2 weeks ago she was an idiot, stupid, ugly. What happened in these 2 weeks? I mean, that's the fastest diet on earth. So there's a lot of it. There are many internal contradictions in hoovering. It's a very fraught and problematic process for the narcissist. So he hoovers you to restore his grandiosity. And the aim, even sometimes unconscious aim, is to hoover you, and then when he succeeds, to immediately dump you, vindictively. A lot of hoovering is concerned with revenge, with punishment. Hoovering is intended to reaffirm the narcissist's grandiosity. I'm irresistible. I'm amazing. I'm the one and only. I'm unique. She can't find a substitute for me. So this is reaffirmation of grandiosity, rebuilding it. The second reason is to punish you for your transgressions, for not fitting into the shared fantasy, for not fulfilling your maternal role, for failing as a mother, for not being his admirer and fan, unthinking admirer and fan, for not catering to his sexual kinkiness and sadism, for letting him down and disappointing him by not agreeing to participate in his adventures as a playmate. There are numerous reasons why you had kind of let him down, and these are transgressions, especially if you cheated on him or stole his money or something. If you really did something not okay, if you had misbehaved. So he needs to punish you for the transgressions. Motive number one, restore grandiosity. Motive number two, punish her. It's a penal, punitive measure. And reason number three is to teach you to behave yourself in the future, to condition you. Hoovering is a form of operant conditioning. It's a form of intermittent reinforcement. I discard you, I hoover you. I discard you, I hoover you. Hot and cold, warm and freezing, loving, hating. It's intermittent reinforcement, and it creates trauma bonding. Hoovering is a long-term, non-contemporaneous. That means it's a long-term form of intermittent reinforcement where the reinforcement, the opposite reinforcement, comes a bit later, is divorced in time. Because most intermittent reinforcement is immediate. I hate you now, I love you in 2 hours. This is, I hate you now, I love you in 2 years. So it's very, very long intermittent reinforcement, but it is. And it creates trauma bonding. It teaches you to behave yourself in the future. It's exactly like housebreaking a pet. You housebreak your dog, you housebreak your cat. Don't pee on the carpet. And don't pee on Sam, etc. So he's domesticating you. He's conditioning you and molding you, Pygmalion Galatea style, to be his perfect snapshot. He is reverting you to the snapshot so that you can fulfill your role in a shared fantasy. These are the functions of hoovering, and it's intimately connected to the mortification that he had experienced when his grandiosity had been challenged in the disintegration of the shared fantasy. When in the phase that the shared fantasy disintegrates, whichever solution he chooses, internal mortification or external mortification, his grandiosity is severely tested. If he chooses external mortification, you controlled the situation. You had the upper hand. You, in your evil mind, wicked schemes and so on, you destroyed him. He had been the victim. But that means that he's helpless. He's not omnipotent. He's not godlike. That's mortification. If he chooses internal mortification, he stupidly destroyed the shared fantasy. He misjudged you when he had idealized you. It reflects badly on him. It also leads to mortification. And mortification forces him to compensate by hoovering. And hoovering is a compensatory grandiosity restructuring or grandiosity reconstruction measure, which at the same time molds you, changes you, conditions you, and transforms you to become such a partner in a future shared fantasy who will not force the shared fantasy again into bankruptcy. Be the right partner, background noise, fan, admirer, sexual sex slave, mother. Got it, kiddos? Okay. Until next time. What are you doing here? Why aren't you going out to socialize, to have one-night stands, to drink yourself to oblivion in obscure bars and pubs whose names you will not remember the next morning? Why don't you play video games for an average of 4.5 hours a day? Latest data. Why don't you, I don't know, watch reruns? Stuff yourself with popcorn. Ah, there's a pandemic out there. That's the reason. Well, in this case, lovely people, I'm the next best option. And today I'm going to discuss two instruments, two tools. They are very rough and tumble. They are very rule of thumb heuristics. They are not tested. They're not peer-reviewed. They're not vetted. But they rely on a database of 1,791 people diagnosed by mental health practitioners, not by their spouses and angry children, diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, and their family members, a total of several million data points. So using the most rigorous statistical methods, I keep analyzing this database, which I've accumulated over the past 23 years. And I keep coming up with surprising answers. And based on these surprising answers, I am now trying to construct a series of tools, psychological tests, and other tools with internal validation. In other words, tools that the database itself validates. Now, of course, the database is flawed. It is self-selecting. It's not representative. It's comprised only of people with the extreme form of narcissism and their suffering family members. It's all true, but still, it's by far the largest corpus, the largest body of knowledge about this disorder. Just for you to have a basis for comparison, the biggest tests ever conducted, biggest experiments, biggest studies ever conducted involved anywhere between 24 and 100 people diagnosed with narcissism. That's it. So I think I have what to contribute. And today I'm going to discuss two rough instruments, raw instruments that I'm working with, and which might be of interest, definitely of interest to narcissists, and of some interest to people who are forced to live or collaborate or work with narcissists, looking from the outside. So the first tool is what I call the HERS, H-E-R-S, the Heartbreak and Recovery Scale. It's actually a tool to gauge mortification. You remember mortification, and if you don't, I recommend and advise to search for mortification on my channel. By the way, my channel, the YouTube channel, is searchable. There is a magnifying glass symbol, and you can click on it and search the channel for relevant videos. You can search by title, you can search by keyword, and so on. So there are about 4, if I recall correctly, videos dedicated to mortification. Now, just to remind you, what is mortification? Mortification is a state of mind of the narcissist induced by an extreme challenge or injury to his self-image, the way he sees himself. Now, the way he sees himself has a pronounced component of grandiosity, so that is challenged and undermined in a process of mortification. But there are also other components, for example, ego syntony. The narcissist feels good with himself. Some narcissists even convince themselves They're good people. And so any challenge to the self-image and self-perception of the narcissist that is sufficiently abrupt, sufficiently strong to penetrate his defenses can cause mortification by forcing the narcissist to see himself as other people see him. Narcissist then cannot escape. It becomes inescapable. Cannot escape himself. He sees himself as a creep, as a monster, as an abuser, as a bad guy, and he can't cope with it. He can't tolerate it, so he decompensates, disintegrates, and very often acts out or develops clinical depression, etc., etc. I discussed all this in the previous videos. And to remind you, mortification is caused by, in most cases, in romantic relationships, mortification is caused by substituting another man for the narcissist in a new shared fantasy. This tends to cause mortification. An exit from the shared fantasy by the romantic or intimate partner, and shifting all the blame and responsibility to the narcissist, especially if such a shift is merited. These are the three components that lead to what we call external mortification of the narcissist. And I've designed a tool which could tell the narcissist to what extent he is mortified. This tool also predicts how long will it take the narcissist to recover from a traumatic breakup or from infidelity by his cherished partner. This tool also predicts if the narcissist will be able to remain friends with the cherished partner, or will try to hoover her, or will he go no contact. And finally, this tool is useful in predicting, will the narcissist try again, hoovering, aforementioned hoovering. Will he try again, but seriously? Will he try to re-establish the shared fantasy? Will he give the intimate partner a second chance at relationship recovery? So the instrument, which I call the instrument Heartbreak and Recovery Scale, HERS. The instrument has 6 questions, and each of these questions, you need to answer yes or no. If it's a no, it's a 0. If it's a yes, it's a 1. So the first question is, did what she or he, I'm going to use she, but of course it applies also to male intimate partners of female narcissists. So in this case, we're talking about female intimate partners of male narcissists. But there is no gender prejudice here. It's simply for convenience sake. So the first question is, did what she do come as a shock to you? Or was it predictable, the culmination of a visible, evident process? If the answer is yes, it came as a shock, give yourself 1 point. If the answer is no, I saw it coming, give yourself 0. Question number 2. Did she humiliate you in the process, especially in public and in front of your peers? If the answer is yes, 1. If the answer is no, 0. Number 3. Did you react with anger or even rage that just wouldn't go away even after the event? Yes or no? Number 4. Following the events which led to the mortification, were you desperate? Were you in the throes of catastrophizing? Did you say to yourself, I will never find someone to replace her? Or did you have negative automatic thoughts? I always fail in my relationships. I'm a monster. I made it happen, etc. Did you have all this? And this is called internal mortification. If you had any of these thoughts, give yourself 1. If you didn't, give yourself 0. Question number 5. In the aftermath, did you experience profound sadness, dysphoria, and did nothing give you pleasure? You couldn't find pleasure in anything? It's called anhedonia. If you experience dysphoria or depression and nothing gave you pleasure after the event, in the aftermath of the event, give yourself 1. If everything was okay a week or 2 or 3 later, give yourself 0. And finally, the last question. In the wake of the dissolution of the bond, did you feel excruciating pain, overwhelming romantic jealousy, or pathological envy? Any of these? If the answer is yes, 1, no, 0. Now, if you scored in this test 2 to 3, it is improbable that you will ever be in touch with that traumatizing person again, with the former intimate partner. If you scored 4, it usually prefaces, predicts, and foresees a new phase of mere friendship or companionship between the two of you, but no re-establishment, no reconstituting the shared fantasy, no romance, just transition to another form of relationship. And if you scored 5 or 6, this usually would lead to frenzied, although doomed, attempts to restore the relationship to its former romantic self, to reconstitute the shared fantasy. And I explained why narcissists try to reconstitute the shared fantasy in another video. They're trying to replace external mortification with internal mortification or another external mortification. It's the only way they can survive. But at any rate, this tool gives you, from an analysis of my database, this tool gives you very, very accurate prediction. The sensitivity is about 98%, and the specificity is well over 95%. In other words, prediction is ironclad. And I'll summarize it again. If you scored 2 to 3, you will never be in touch again. If you scored 4, after some time, you will make contact, you will try to hoover her, but not as a romantic partner, usually as a friend, as a companion, friend with benefits. If you scored 5 or 6, you will be hysterical, you will be in panic, you will be driven, you will be compulsive, trying to re-establish the shared fantasy with her, trying to hoover her, to scoop her back, to brainwash her again, to addict her, to condition her to be again your intimate romantic partner, in order to resolve actually the mortification. Now the second instrument that I've designed quite a few dozen actually. I'm going to introduce them gradually over time. The second instrument that I would like to discuss today is what I call the S1, S2 score. S1 is promiscuity and S2 is self-efficacy. Now let me explain what is promiscuity and what is self-efficacy. Promiscuity is indiscriminately engaging in sex with partners almost regardless of their qualities, traits, behaviors, and profile. Self-efficacy is the ability to induce beneficial outcomes in the environment and in your life through your efforts. By exerting yourself, by investing, by working hard, you succeed to obtain results. You succeed to accomplish things. The more you succeed, the more self-efficacious you are. You then have agency over your life. So these are the two parameters, promiscuity and self-efficacy. When I say promiscuity, I'm referring to someone, and again, I'm going to use the female pronoun, but it equally applies to the male pronoun. Right now, there are excellent reasons to believe there are equal numbers of narcissists among men and women, as opposed to 20 years ago. Narcissism has risen dramatically. There's been a tsunami wave of narcissism among women. So I'm going to use the female voice, but it's just for convenience sake. So promiscuity is sleeping with multiple partners simultaneously, engaging in group sex, engaging in casual sex habitually as a habit or as the main form of sex, serial cheating on a dedicated intimate partner, in a primary relationship. So, for example, cheating on your husband, group sex with relatives, or sex with relatives, including incest, sex with age-inappropriate partners, very old men, very young, casual sex with strangers in unusual, impersonal settings, rape, sexual acts and teasing, so teasing as a form of sexual act, sex while drunk, or while high, or while stoned, or while wasted, habitually, again, not as a one-off, but as a habit, and sexting as a habit. All these things are strong indicators and components, ingredients of promiscuity. So this is promiscuity. I found out from analyzing my database that there are five traits of a potential source of supply which render this source of supply irresistible to the narcissist. If the potential source of supply has these 5 traits in varying degrees, she becomes a natural as a source of supply. And the narcissist will invest and pursue her and court her much more than others. So promiscuity is number 1. It seems that narcissists react very powerfully to promiscuity. Number 2, self-trashing. Narcissists are attracted very strongly, almost irresistibly, to women who self-trash. When I say self-trash, engage in reckless behaviors, self-damaging, self-defeating, and self-destructive behaviors as a form of self-punishment, as a form of self-devaluation, self-degradation, and self-despoiling. That attracts a narcissist a lot. The next thing that seems to be a determinant and a predictor, a prognosticator of attraction, is disclosure. So the more open the future partner about her promiscuity and self-trashing, the more the narcissist is going to be attracted irresistibly, inexorably, and at the same time develop severe abandonment anxiety, feel pain, feel a lot of pain, and react with desperate attempts to re-establish object constancy. So if the woman is promiscuous, self-trashing, and talks openly about it, this trifecta is almost guarantees that the narcissist will gravitate towards such a partner and will try to acquire her, to make her his, to possess her, and to convert her and transform her into his partner, his intimate partner in the shared fantasy. The next 2 components are diametrically opposed to the first 3 in many ways. First of all, the level of organization of the personality. A high level of organization. The higher the level of organization of personality, the more the narcissist is attracted. Now, it usually doesn't go together. A high level of organization of personality sits ill, doesn't usually go with self-trashing or promiscuity. Women who self-trash and are promiscuous, and especially if they're proud of it, are usually women with very low self-esteem, labile moods, and dysregulated emotions. This is, for example, a typical profile of a woman with borderline personality disorder, or even histrionic personality disorder, hyper dysregulated emotionality. But if the narcissist finds this unicorn, a promiscuous, self-trashing woman whose personality is highly organized, and they do exist, by the way, whose personality is highly organized, that renders her, as I just said, a unicorn. And finally, self-efficacy. A high self-efficacy is again very attractive to the narcissist, something that draws him in a way that he cannot resist, does not want to resist. Put the 5 together: promiscuity, self-trashing, full proud disclosure, high organization of personality, and high self-efficacy, and you get the ideal profile of a partner in the shared fantasy. Of course, the narcissist never finds this profile in its totality. He compromises. He finds 3 out of 5 elements. It's good enough. Finds 4, wonderful. But if he finds 5, this is going to be the woman of his life. Why is that? Can we try to understand the psychodynamic background to this bizarre concoction of traits and behaviors? Well, first of all, you do remember that narcissists are subject to Madonna-Whore, a Madonna-Whore complex. They divide all women into Madonnas, asexual Madonnas, sexless Madonnas, saints, women with whom they can develop a business, establish a family, do many things together, be great companions, but no sex. They will not have sex with them because sex is defiling, self is despoiling, self is degrading, and you don't do this to a saint or to a Madonna or to your truly intimate partner in life. So there's Madonna, and then there's whore. Whore are all the other women, the women who are legitimate sex objects, the women who can be subjected to sadistic dismantling, despoiling, degrading, demeaning, debasing by the narcissist, the only type of sex he knows. Kinky, but with humiliation, with a pronounced element of humiliating the woman. And there are all these other women. So the promiscuity and self-trashing elements that we mentioned before, and especially if the woman is proud of these things, they're strong indicators of a whore, of exactly the type of woman who would constitute a legitimate sex object in the narcissist's mind. It's like a red light goes on. Wow, a siren. Yeah, she's the one. She's the prostitute. She's the woman who would allow me, who would let me, do anything to her. She will not resist or object or reject me. Never mind what I do to her. Never mind how I humiliate her. Never mind how I despoil her, cause her pain, etc., etc. The sadistic element, and so these are the indicators of this. And then the personality organization and the self-efficacy. They are hallmarks of a mother. Mothers are highly organized. Well, supposed to be highly organized. They are highly self-efficacious. They obtain results. They accomplish things. They are the safe base of the child. The child feels that the mother is a pillar. She's a foundation. She's stable. She's always there. She's safe. She's protective. So a high personality organization, high self-efficacy, are mother-like elements, saint-like elements. So the Madonna-Whore complex causes the narcissist to look for the impossible. A woman who on one hand is a playmate in the whorish sense, in the sexual sense, promiscuous, self-trashing, open to submissiveness, open to sadism, open to kink, open to humiliation. And on the other hand, he wants in the same woman to have strong personality traits, entrepreneurship, go-getter, daredevil, self-efficacious, gets what she wants, goes for it, has a high personality organization, stable, strong, cool-headed, etc., etc. And he wants this combination. Now, believe it or not, this combination does exist. And the narcissist spends most of his life looking for exactly this kind of woman. And when he finds her, his infatuation is limitless. And the subsequent shared fantasy is full substitute for reality. He then totally migrates from reality into the shared fantasy. And when he's inevitably mortified, because this kind of woman is likely to cheat on him, likely to betray him, and likely to finally discard him and abandon him, having realized who he is. So the end of such a shared fantasy is a massive, usually, not always, a massive mortification. And remember, mortification is caused by when the woman migrates to another shared fantasy with another man, exiting the shared fantasy with the narcissist, but she must also blame the narcissist for her transition, blame him for her cheating, for her abandonment, for dumping him, transfer all the responsibility to him, make him feel bad about himself. If she only does the first two, if she transitions to a shared fantasy with another man and exits the fantasy with the narcissist, but takes responsibility, blame, guilt, and shame upon herself, exempting the narcissist, exonerating the narcissist, there will not be mortification. So these are two tools that narcissists can, use at their leisure and pleasure. Nothing much to do during this pandemic. And I hope they will derive some insights, although that's a very tall order when it comes to narcissists. The next video I'm going to make is in response to a series of questions I've received about how I'm coping during this pandemic. What's my inner landscape? How do I feel? And so on. So stay with us for the next episode. Never forget that in the process of devaluation, the narcissist converts you in his mind into a persecutory object, an enemy, from idealized to derealized, devalued, and then discarded. To reacquire you, to hoover you, the narcissist must do two things. One, he must re-idealize you. He must Photoshop the snapshot of you in his mind so as to render you again an ideal maternal figure. But that's only half the work. The other half is to make sure that his hoovering would end successfully, because narcissists don't take kindly to failure and rejection. They're very fragile and vulnerable, even in black. Okay, Shoshanim. My name is Sam Vaknin, and I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, a former visiting professor of psychology, and currently on the faculty of SIAPS. And onward we move towards narcissistic probing. Narcissistic probing is a phrase that I've coined to describe the narcissist's hesitant tests, probing, attempts to ascertain that the hoovering will work and that it won't end in a fiasco and the termination of the shared fantasy for good. Narcissistic probing. Narcissists attend therapy after collapse or mortification. And so there are people who say that clinical psychologists would regard narcissists as mostly vulnerable and covert, while psychology professors, such as myself, would regard narcissists as mostly grandiose and overt. But it is, of course, nonsense. It's the same narcissist. It's the same narcissist. The process of collapse exposes the vulnerable and fragile core of the narcissist. Every narcissist has a fragile, vulnerable core. Narcissism is 100% all the time, in all cases, no exception, compensatory. Narcissism, cognitive distortions such as grandiosity, they compensate for an inferiority complex, for a bad object that keeps informing the narcissist how unworthy and inadequate he is, what a loser. And so the narcissist needs to compensate for this. Now, most of the time, it works. Most of the time, the narcissist is able to coerce people to provide him with narcissistic supply, to participate in his shared fantasies, to adulate him, to surround him with luxurious lifestyle, money, sex, you name it. Most of the time. But some of the time, the narcissist fails. He fails to extract narcissistic supply from his human environment. He fails to secure his goals on the way to obtaining supply. So he collapses. This is the collapsed narcissist. It is then that all the narcissistic defenses, the overt, grandiose defenses, are disabled. It is then that they are deactivated, and this process is known as decompensation. And then, of course, having hit rock bottom, these narcissists attend therapy. And so clinicians, people who work with narcissists as therapists, as psychiatrists, as psychologists, yes, it's true. They see the vulnerable underbelly of the narcissist. And everyone else sees the overt and grandiose side. But these are two sides of the same coin. And all the self-styled experts, including those with academic degrees, are talking nonsense, I'm sorry to say.
Absolute nonsense. I've read an article in the September edition of Scientific American, and only Elsa Roningstam made some sense. Everyone else there got it 100% wrong. And I'm not talking about the YouTubers, I'm talking about the so-called academic experts, who I've never heard of, by the way, most of them. Elsa Roningstam is definitely an expert on narcissism, a very famous one. So, why am I telling you all this? Because the process of devaluation and discard exposes the narcissist's fragile, vulnerable underbelly. Remember that within the shared fantasy, the narcissist is a child, and you are the mother. You're the maternal figure. The narcissist needs to reenact with you early childhood conflicts which are unresolved. He needs to separate from you and become an individual. But you are still the mother. You are the adult in the room, and he's just a baby, an infant. So the narcissist feels throughout this process disempowered the way a baby does, the way an infant does. And then, having devalued you and discarded you, he feels uncertain, vulnerable, fragile. He, in this sense, becomes covert, or the covert aspects of him become a lot more dominant than throughout the duration of the shared fantasy. The end of every shared fantasy ends in devaluation and discard, period. This has nothing to do with you as an intimate partner, and there's nothing you can do about it. The very purpose of a shared fantasy is to convert you into a maternal figure so that the narcissist can dump you. End of story. But in the final stages of the shared fantasy, the narcissist faces enormous stresses and huge anxieties, because the internal object in his mind that represents you is being transformed in ways which are essentially ominous, minacious ways that threaten the equilibrium and the precarious balance of the narcissist's house of cards, aka personality. The narcissist also has to get rid of you, and the narcissist is a creature of habit. The narcissist risks a backlash or punitive measures by you, and the narcissist is a coward. In short, the period of devaluation and discard is not easy on the narcissist and tends to push him to become more vulnerable. So he becomes more passive-aggressive, and then he becomes more aggressive. He becomes more envious. He becomes more malevolent. He becomes more scheming. He becomes, in short, a bit more psychopathic, secondary psychopathic. You remember, I keep saying that when the narcissist faces collapse, he becomes a bit of a borderline. He becomes emotionally dysregulated. He decompensates. He acts out. The same goes here. The devaluation discard process is the collapse of the shared fantasy. During this limited phase, the narcissist clinically is a collapsed narcissist, and therefore exposing his borderline covert side. For a short period of time, mind you. It could last a day, it could last a week, it could last a month. It's never long term, and it never comes to characterize the narcissist. It's just a phase that the narcissist is going through. But still, he changes. The devaluation discard, ironically, often changes this phase often changes the narcissist more than it changes you. And so, hoovering is an example of this hybridity, this combination of grandiosity and vulnerability. On the one hand, to believe that he is able to hoover you, to develop the conviction that he can re-idealize you and he will come running back. That's grandiose, of course. That's cognitive distortion in some cases, unfortunately, not in all. But it requires grandiosity. It requires the belief in one's own omnipotence and irresistibility. So there's this grandiose element in hoovering. But hoovering also contains a vulnerable element. Hoovering comes on the tail end of devaluation and discard, at that phase
that stage, the narcissist is still self-mortified, if you wish, or self-injured at least, and definitely self-collapsed. So the narcissist needs to make sure that he doesn't suffer yet another self-inflicted narcissistic injury by being rejected by you. If the narcissist attempts to hoover you and you reject him, that's narcissistic injury. If you reject him in public, in a shaming way, that's narcissistic mortification. That's something the narcissist does not want to go through, especially having lived through, having endured the collapse of the shared fantasy. Admittedly, the collapse of the shared fantasy was brought on by the narcissist himself. It is, as I said, self-inflicted. The narcissist made it happen. It didn't have to happen. The narcissist made it happen because of his compulsion to separate and individuate. But still, it's a collapse. The end of any shared fantasy, the terminal phase, is a collapse. The narcissist is vulnerable because he is clinically, has been rendered a collapsed narcissist. So he can't take the risk of another narcissistic injury, rejection, mockery, humiliation, shame, mortification. He can't take this risk. He needs to make sure that if he were to attempt to hoover you, you would say yes, and not just any yes, what we call enthusiastic consent, a resounding yes. Narcissists generally, even overt and grandiose ones, or maybe especially overt and grandiose ones, cannot countenance rejection. They're hypersensitive to rejection. That's why they develop cold empathy in order to scan for people who possibly could put them down or take them down. That's why they are hypervigilant, all the time scanning for insults and slights and interpreting even the most innocuous behavior and innocent remarks as a form of attack. It's all because they have to protect the vulnerable, fragile, delusional, cognitively distorted core that is known as narcissism. That's the only form of true narcissism. Anything that is not vulnerable, anything that is not fragile, that's psychopathy. That's not narcissism. So narcissists, real narcissists, true narcissists, cannot countenance rejection. Rejection terrifies. They need to make sure of the outcomes of the hoovering and to resolve any cognitive dissonance that may arise. And so they probe. They collect data. They gather information. They test you in small ways and big. They surround you. They create an environment in which resembles a laboratory where your minutest behaviors and speech acts and words and writings are interpreted ad nauseum. I call it the hermeneutic lab. So this is probing. Now, lovebombing, for example, is a form of probing. Grooming is a form of probing. Lovebombing is intended to condition you, of course, to shape you via operant conditioning, to render you docile, subservient, submissive, intimate partner who is in love with herself, with her idealized image through the narcissist's gaze. Yes, it's all true. And grooming is intended to condition you to behave in specific ways, which would uphold the narcissist's inflated, fantastic self-image and allow the shared fantasy to unfold the way the narcissist wants it to, with you as a maternal figure. So lovebombing and grooming have many, many crucial functions. But one of the functions of lovebombing and grooming is to test you, to see whether you're going to fit into the shared fantasy, whether you're going to fulfill your maternal role appropriately, whether you're going to accept and love the narcissist unconditionally, regardless of his misconduct and misbehavior. In short, lovebombing and grooming are a testing phase, a probing phase. So these are examples of narcissistic probing. Narcissistic abuse itself is a form of probing. The first phase of narcissistic abuse is intended to answer the question, will she love me unconditionally as a mother would? Now remember, he and she are interchangeable. Half of all narcissists are women, so just change the gender pronouns. So we're beginning to see that many of the narcissist behaviors which are attributed to the narcissist's grandiosity, coercive nature, antisocial impulses, many of these behaviors actually emanate from insecurity. The narcissist's profound sense of insecurity. Because the narcissist has an internal image as a bad object, and because he compensates for it by projecting a false self, a facade, acting, faking, the narcissist is very insecure. He knows what he's doing. Narcissists are self-aware. Don't let any self-styled expert tell you otherwise. They're definitely self-aware. And so they tend to be hypervigilant. They develop paranoid ideation, secretary ideation. They test people all the time. They trust no one. But they trust no one because everyone and his dog is an opportunity for pain, for hurt. Anyone and everyone can reject the narcissist, humiliate the narcissist, criticize the narcissist, disagree with the narcissist, shame the narcissist, in private or in public. Everyone is a potential for hurt, for harm. So the narcissist needs to neutralize these incipient, ambient threats, potential threats, by gathering intelligence. Think of it as a CIA, one-man CIA. So lovebombing and grooming, narcissistic abuse, they're all forms of testing your mettle, verifying, making sure what you're made of and how you're going to behave in a variety of extreme conditions. The narcissist also probes via third parties, especially in the hoovering phase, when he is not sure of the outcomes, having rejected you, having abandoned you, having devalued you, having discarded you, having shamed you, having humiliated you. The narcissist cannot be sure of your response to his attempts to re-idealize you and reacquire you as a participant and a playmate in a shared fantasy. He cannot be sure. You may tell him to F off, naturally, as you should do. So he uses third parties, flying monkeys, in various settings in order to collect information. Are you predisposed to take him back? Would you be positively reactive to any attempt to hoover you? Do you miss the shared fantasy and the narcissist? So there's a lot of information gathering going on through third parties. You won't believe who the narcissist recruits. Your dearest and closest friends, family members, people you've trusted all your life, they are converted by the narcissist, and they become the narcissist's eyes and ears and surveillance and listening devices. And you're surrounded, you're besieged by extensions of the narcissist. And the information flows back. The narcissist analyzes it, contextualizes it, and decides whether you are hoovering material or not. Similarly, the narcissist stalks you on social media, of course, using anonymous accounts, fake accounts, and sometimes his own accounts, if he doesn't care. So he gathers a lot of relevant info through social media. Be careful. Keep your private life private. Don't overshare. Coming to think of it, don't share at all. Convert your accounts to private accounts. Reject all kinds of friend requests. I mean, there's a period after the devaluation and the discard where, by the way, that's the most frequent period where hoovering is the most frequent. Hoovering is most frequent almost immediately after devaluation and discard, believe it or not. So there's this period of, I don't know, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years maybe, where you are very open to intrusive attempts to gather data about you and then to deploy this data, to manipulate it and to abuse it or misuse it in order to coerce you or cajole you or convince you or persuade you to join a new shared fantasy where again you would be the queen idealized, but you will be the queen mother. And again, of course, this shared fantasy 2.0 is going to end up the same way. Devaluation, discard, separation, individuation, and so on and so forth. So immediately after devaluation and discard, and for a period, I would say minimum period of 2 years, you should be very vigilant, very careful, because the narcissist is all over you, having ever devalued you, having abandoned you, having rejected you, having teamed up already with a new partner in the throes of another shared fantasy. The narcissist is still all over you inside his mind. You introject. The internal object that represents you is still inside his mind. And still, this object is still tormenting him because it used to be ideal. Now it is an enemy. Now it is persecutory. And it tortures him from the inside. The only way to restore inner peace is to match you with the internal object, either as an enemy, and then the narcissist would push your boundaries and force you to become an enemy, or as a re-idealized intimate partner. And that's hoovering. Narcissists can hoover you as an enemy. It's a common mistake online. The narcissist hoovers you because he needs to reconcile you, the external object, with the internal object that represents you. So if you refuse to become an intimate partner in a new shared fantasy, the narcissist would do his best to convert you into a true enemy. He would stalk you. He would threaten you. He would attack you. He would spy on you. He would try to destroy your life. He would do anything and everything for you to become a real active enemy. And then he is at peace because he can reconcile this with the devalued persecutory object in his mind. So, to attain inner peace, the narcissist needs you post-devaluation and discard. Narcissist needs you in the aftermath to become either an enemy or, again, an intimate partner. There's no middle ground. And he's going to try to re-idealize you and hoover you one way, but then if he fails, he will hoover you as an enemy. And that is something much neglected in everything I've heard online, and by the way, in the literature. Hoovering you as an enemy. So it would explain many of the behaviors that you've come across, I'm sure, with a narcissist. And narcissists can, of course, vacillate between the two. One day, you are a potential intimate partner, and you're ideal, and you're wonderful, and you're beautiful, and you're amazing, and so on. And the next day, you're the enemy. And you're hateful. And you're vengeful. And you've destroyed his life. And it's all your fault. And the day after, again, you're an ideal. So the narcissist attempts simultaneously to probe both possibilities directly with you in a channel of communication, and at the same time, always through third parties, social media, and indirect intelligence gathering. He consults other people about you. He collects all the information from your social media accounts. He may impersonate people and call your bank or your workplace. It can get really bad if you don't collaborate with the narcissist in settling the internal object. The narcissist can and does become antisocial to the point of acting criminally, identity theft, and so on and so forth. So your best bet is actually not to reject the narcissist's hoovering attempts outright. I mean, first you go no contact, of course. But if a narcissist insists on contact, I am not of the opinion that you should be contrarian and adverse and act with animosity and hostility and fend him off and so on and so forth. Because if you don't collaborate with the hoovering efforts one way or another, he's going to settle on a version of you which would compel him to act in ways which could be detrimental to your personal safety, career, and family. So the way to react to a narcissist hoovering is to be firm with your boundaries, but not aggressive. To say, I've moved on, I have another life now, and I wish you all the best, and so on. So to be firm. But at that particular phase, to communicate. Now, you don't need to extend the communication, and don't fall in the trap of the narcissist's attempts to recreate some portions of the shared fantasy. You just keep repeating, these are my boundaries, and I will not relent. Having communicated this 2 or 3 times, go, no contact again.